This is an easy, feel-good story. This is kind of making the rounds on the internet. A bunch of people with all the same singular confused face, and someone pointed out that the Lidl logo has a dog playing a piano in it. Lidl is a grocery store brand. They're actually rapidly growing. They're opening hundreds of stores, and this is their official logo, Lidl. They have this little eye that's on its side, and it's kind of balancing the dot on the top. So I'm going to draw on top of it here. We've got the piano here. So this would be where the keys are. And then if you look here, this is the dog. So you've got like a little fluffy tail. You've got his feet. We'll give him little eyeballs. Little smiley face. I feel like I'm playing Pictionary with you guys, except nobody is calling out the answer. Charm City Run, a local Maryland lifestyle store. For the longest time, they had this logo. I always read it as like maybe city streets of sorts, even though this isn't the shape of Baltimore, and maybe this was like representing the Inner Harbor. They recently got a rebrand, and I do not like it. A purple sans serif word mark with a little circular R. Apparently, according to the release video, it is a circular motif that goes around the actual sole of the shoe, which is the old logo. Oliver says goes around the sole, sounds like something they made up later to explain it. And yeah, it reminds me of like being in art school and when I was like sweating through some crits and I had to come up with something, and it just doesn't hit the way that I want it to. That it also has a striking resemblance to Retail Me Not, one of those coupon websites, but they're also relying on the R. They're also relying on a type of purple. It feels like if they already had such a big presence in Baltimore City for their look, like maybe it wasn't the best and most beautiful logo. The shoe was not great. I also don't like it when it's like here's to the runners, the bibas, the dibibas. I'm like, that feels way too like 2010s to me. I also don't think a lot of current companies have type like this, thin and tall. It feels art deco. So I think if they could have leaned into that, that could have been something. I feel bad for criticizing it, and they do good for the city, but I feel like maybe they should revisit Charm City Run. I don't think it's enough to freak out about it. I'm not gonna like cyberbully them, but not a great rebrand. So the new Warner Brothers animation should just be these last 6 seconds, but revisit Cocomelon Tweety Belle, because this smooth, shiny version is missing one thing that the character is famous for. Let's rewind. I'm Ryan Selvey, and I cover design and creator news. We start off with a circle wipe into Burbank, which is iconically Looney Tunes. The sketch animation feels good. It's representing the first step of any project, but then it melts into a confusing gouache frame, like maybe step 2. But this reminds me of Springfield, not Warner Brothers. And we're introduced to a very 3D Tweety. Wonder if like Bugs had scheduling conflicts. But then things get weirder. It morphs into this unownable golden hour. Why do you think this diner is here? It feels too specific to be nothing. And then one last morph brings us into the classic 3D backlot from the official bumper. You can actually see LA in the background here, and the sun peeks through the buildings and melts it into that iconic golden ripple. And the best part is right here. The gold shield dissolves into a cartoon with gorgeous red pops of color on the undersides. These clouds also spatially dolly back and add a really great depth. But then when Tweety Bird swoops in for the reveal, that's not giving Warner Brothers, it's Disney. And here's the iconic part that they're missing. He flies in way too smooth. Brand language is bigger than the sum of its parts. Animation and motion design live in things like speed ramps and smears. Looney Tunes was built on squash and stretch. The smears are part of their DNA. Without it, this bumper isn't a bad one, but it looks like it could be anybody's, not uniquely Warner Brothers. This was announced at this gigantic animation festival. The festival is called Annecy Animation Film Festival. They came on stage to save face after having a really weird couple of years. You guys might remember Coyote vs. Acme. It is a cartoon that kind of feels like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So they're acting alongside flat 2D counterparts. They added a little bit more 3D a little bit to them, but still kept true to the 2D nature. And you can even see here that they're doing the crazy proportions. They're doing squash and stretch and moving things around in this movie that is now coming out in August. It was supposed to come back years ago, but then they canceled it. But when looking at the intro itself, I was kind of underwhelmed by the choices that they made. I also don't understand why the water tower itself changes shape. If you watch it back, you can see that it has some weird morphing in it, and not sure what's going on with that. I don't know if that was just like a puppet warp or if it was potentially AI. I don't know, but it has a really weird vibe to it. But I really, really enjoyed this wipe into having it start with the original iconic one and then moving over over to a nice cartoon version. I like having the little cartoon shading as well on the underside of the red. And then I also am glad that they still kept the realistic background in the same way that they have the realistic humans in the Coyote movie, because I like to have that kind of connection and bring it into the real world, and because it also really helps make some of those colors pop. There are a bunch of stories in this story, one being there is a new Slate coming up. We have Cat in the Hat coming out later this year, Bad Fairies, Margie Claus, The Places You'll Go, Dynamic Duo, Hello Kitty, and the Lunar Chronicles. So that's over the next 2 years. They want to be on a creator-led new chapter. So they want to really focus on having people come in with different styles, different stories, and putting them at the forefront. There is this one called Prehistoria from the creator of Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss, which are extremely popular YouTube animated series. We talked 2 or 3 weeks ago about Backrooms getting to the movies. Animation is also having its own thing. And so the Amazing Digital Circus is a different creator, but it actually cracked the top 5 worldwide box office releases when they did a limited release of their animated series in theaters. It's just this thing where all of these studios are suddenly being like, wait a second. Like, these creators are having these gigantic million people followers. If we then take them and elevate them to a feature film, it will actually also bring in the money. Of course, there are also instances where that didn't happen, where like Ryan's World used to be #1 for all of YouTube. When they tried to do a movie, they spent $10 million on making it, and it made less than $1 million. So it was like a $9 million loss or something. But it's interesting. The tides are changing. Things are moving. The way things find success are different. If you really like a creator and you see that they are growing, there is chance that that might turn into something else. And this is looking at the World Cup. This is coming from Pimp My Type. The crux of their argument is actually a critical one, where they're saying the type that they have used is not successful. That it looks great in branding, it looks great visually, but when it comes to the actual scoreboard, it is coming up short. We have this breakdown of what they're using for each. Open Sans Bold is obviously a great, easy one, but then they're also using this condensed font for different pieces of work. The scoreboard is pairing these two, and it says that letters are very tight and squarish. The inner shapes tend to disappear. This makes them harder to distinguish, and tricodes for countries are not always that obvious, which to a point though is also a cultural shortcoming, not necessarily a design shortcoming, because they also have the flag. I've seen this kind of brought up several times in many different places. They're like, oh, well, it doesn't really make sense with the country tricodes. And I'm like, but those are the tricodes. Those are what they are. They're saying flags next to it help, but not everyone knows them either. So like, I don't know if you want them to fully write out the entire thing, but then all different countries have different lengths. It says this will be seen on a variety of screens and resolutions, so it should be as legible as possible. There's over a 50% chance that you interacted with this company today, but you don't recognize the logo. Do you? This is Logo Zero, where we take a look at original logos from famous brands. This one's all the way back from 1946. It's got this strong geometric T enclosed in a circle, but that's also back when they had a different name. They originally sold these rice cookers, and they were largely unsuccessful. But as the years went by, they introduced a few new products like the Type G and the H1, but as they grew, they realized that Western markets couldn't pronounce the Japanese company's brand.
特許通信工業系
They decided to market the new product under a new name, a hybrid for the Latin word for sound, and a popular Western slang term, Sony. So the TR-55 was brought to market with a strange logo and a fun new name, Sony. Kind of looks like a lighter to me. Then 2 years later, in 1957, Yasuo Kuroki designed the first iteration of today's logo. Since then, it's gone through minimal changes, but stayed pretty consistent ever since. Oh yeah, and the stat at the beginning, over 50% of all smartphones have a Sony image sensor. So, how long did it take for you to figure it out? Follow for more fun design stories.